Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Nikki Acosta. I am your hostess of Cloud Unfiltered, where we talk all things cloud. I'm joined today by my awesome co-host, Val, and somebody that's a little bit near and dear to my corazon. And I say that because Jeff and I did, I don't know how many podcast episodes we did, like 70 or something. A lot over the course of a couple years. And so it's really kind of neat. I haven't talked to you that much, Jeff, and I haven't seen you that much because I haven't been traveling. But introduce yourself.
Wait. I gotta say first, this is weird. I'm a little jealous of Val.
I feel like I'm the new guest.
This is weird being a guest. Like I want to say, okay, Nikki, please introduce our guest. That's me. So I'm Jeff Dickey. I did the podcast, the OpenStack podcast with Nikki for quite a while. We've got a lot of awesome episodes, and we had a lot of fun on the podcast and traveling together and doing the podcast live, and it was pretty fun. I work for a company called Redapt. We really focus on building out large scale infrastructure for some of the biggest players in the whole internet space. We do a lot of gaming companies and big banks and a lot of web apps, gaming. Folks that are buying tens of thousands of servers at a time and need them in multiple locations around the globe, or building kind of mini AWS footprints around the globe. We do that, and so we've been involved in a tremendous amount of cloud installs globally for the last 7 years. We've been doing it. So started early with the cloud.com folks. They're now the Rancher folks, but cloud.com, which turned into CloudStack, and still going. I mean, the community's still going, but it's really small. And then we got into OpenStack, and now we're pretty much all containers and kind of Kubernetes.
Let's talk about that. We were talking a little bit on the pre-show prep call just about kind of the state of the cloud. And, you and I both have been involved in OpenStack for a very long time. And we've seen kind of sort of this emergence of small companies and startups and this kind of explosion of this community, which has now kind of been consolidated back into essentially large companies. And so we were talking about just open source in general, but share your thoughts just on OpenStack, sort of past, present, and future.
Oh, OpenStack. Okay, Pat. Oh, okay. And this is the Unfiltered podcast, right? I mean,
you are a guest. Although I have to do a disclaimer that what is hit here does not necessarily reflect the opinions of Cisco. Ding.
Ding. Yeah. Well, I always worry because I want to be. I don't want to be controversial, but I have thoughts that really are different from the community on this. But yeah, so OpenStack was a really interesting ride for us. We got in. I think we got in a little bit late on it. We weren't from the ground floor. We've worked with almost every partner. We got in early with cloud scaling with those folks before EMC bought them. We've been with a few companies that have been acquired. So they're going through it. OpenStack was the hottest thing on the market. It really took the mind share away from CloudStack, and in CloudStack we deployed CloudStack at 50, 60,000 nodes. Hosts like that's pretty uncommon for typical cloud infrastructure these days, or any software. It takes
that sounds huge.
It's quite a bit of effort to get 60,000 nodes in OpenStack. So we made that transition into the OpenStack realm, working with those partners. We've worked with, so many.
Rackspace is how I met you.
We did Rackspace. We actually built out the Rackspace cloud, their cluster of 2,000 nodes for OpenStack. Just recently, we've built out a lot of clouds. We partnered with Mirantis on building their unlocked appliance. So we did all the hardware, and we've deployed that to a bunch of locations. And it's interesting thinking back to what has worked and what hasn't worked on OpenStack. OpenStack is so complex, and we were talking earlier about on the podcast. We would ask the question about, is OpenStack too open? And all of our guests who are really prominent in the community would always say, no, it's not too open. They liked the fact that it was open. And I think that's what really has hurt OpenStack the most in the end is being all inclusive to, it was like, how do you want to do it? It's asking the user the question. We don't care. Just you do it how you want to do it. Like, we'll support anything you want. You want to put, like run this on, from any sort of configuration you want. We'll try to support that. And I just think that's wrong. I think there should have been a core. I know Rob tried to work, the dev core and all of that, like, should have been more of a priority in the community. We should have got the core working first and then expanded. It should have been rock solid. You look at the years spent in OpenStack and how it's just, we're not 5 years behind public cloud. We're like 15 years because with that acceleration the public cloud has, it's really discouraging to see how far behind we are in the private infrastructure space, which is definitely necessary today. There are reasons, there are use cases, and there's still so much legacy infrastructure out there that can't just be moved to cloud native. We've got a customer that has 35,000 custom apps. We're not just going to rewrite them. They're not going to say, okay, next year we're going to rewrite 35,000 apps and make them cloud native, and we're going to go on public cloud. Like, these are very sophisticated, crazy apps that need to be pulled along the cloud journey, not rewritten. So, OpenStack was tough. Like, I think there was a lot of struggle in trying to include everyone and not have guardrails. There should have been rings. There should have been, okay, here's how it works. Here's another ring for, okay, here's some more features and stuff and services that will work. But, and then there's the outer ring, which is like anyone and everyone. But yeah, that was tough.
Hard though, just because, of the sheer number of companies that were participating, and B, the number of, I'll say, hardware vendors that were participating. It seemed like, as far as a core went, depending on where you work, there was a different definition of what core should look like to begin with. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think it was a losing battle, because you're the hottest thing in the world, and you have every big company trying to profit off of their own IP on it. It was a losing battle from the beginning. I mean, it's like, I applaud the foundation. They've done an incredible job for how they've done it and what they've done, considering they're playing with giants. Like, they are doing some crazy work. I offended someone, the CEO of a OpenStack partner of ours in Tokyo, because I'm gonna get so much crap for this, but unfiltered, Jeff, unfiltered.
Just say it, Jeff. We want to hear it.
Well, I was making a joke. He came up to me and he's like, "Oh, how much revenue have you guys brought in with OpenStack this year?" And I looked at him and I said, "No one makes money on OpenStack. The foundation is the only company that makes money off OpenStack." And he just got this ghost face and walked off. it just, really offended him, because his business is based on OpenStack. So, and again, and that's no dig on the foundation. Like, they've done a great job in pulling this along. Like, this is an impossible task. Like, they have basically huddled the entire tech community under this umbrella and have made that work. Now, it does work, but I think people, again, you have to work the way OpenStack works and not push those boundaries. You think people underestimate the amount of effort that it takes to make it work the way they want it to work? Yes, absolutely. Because and we challenge people all the time on requirements. It's like, well, we want to do this, we want to do this, and a lot of the folks are infrastructure folks, where it's like, well, do your devs want that? Like, you got to think about the customer, what they want, and how they want to consume it, and some of the new bells and whistles that come out in every 6 months are not necessary, but they're we have to go in and like, okay, do you need this or do you want this? Because I want it too, but do you need it? Like, do your developers even know it exists?
Does it even help the end users that are consuming it, right?
It doesn't. And I think what got caught up in the OpenStack industry or the OpenStack community is we got caught up in in who can build this, how we build it, how big it gets, what's our footprint. Like I'm doing this big OpenStack thing, and I think it got kind of out of control where we lost sight of what the purpose of this is to fuel innovation on top of OpenStack. It was supposed to be, a platform, right? A platform for development. And I think another thing that was tough was the marketing around OpenStack. I mean, it was everyone, we talked to CIOs and about, well, okay, why do you want OpenStack? And because we would flesh this out. We would really want to make sure that they understood what they were getting into because, of the complexity of OpenStack, just because it's hard to be an expert when there's so many pieces. Like we work with some companies that have an enormous team supporting their OpenStack footprint. But it was kind of the marketing fluff around that was like, okay, it's open source, and which means it's free. And that was kind of a requirement. And the fact that there's no vendor lock-in, you don't want vendor lock-in. Vendor lock-in is bad. And I just, I really questioned that. Like, as I drank the Kool-Aid and I pitched that. You don't want vendor lock-in. That's horrible. But you go, that's what keeps things humming though. Like the vendor is your lifeline. It's your insurance policy. Like you really do in the end when you're running business critical apps that are making revenue for the company that are paying your salary. You want that. You need that parachute, right? You want that to be supported. I just got a car recently, and I just can't imagine like not getting the warranty and not having auto insurance, and it's like, why on earth would I want to build a Franken car and get parts from every random place and batteries and all this stuff and build it? And yeah, it could be the coolest car ever, but when it breaks, well,
there's no one that's going to take speed too, right? You want it done fast because you can't be without a car.
Well, and you're competing with public cloud, which is a credit card away. So we worked on these OpenStack projects that were that would take sometimes a year and a half. A lot of them. There's some that have been going on for years that they're just kind of trying to tape together. But in a year and a half, you're not a year and a half behind. It's you're like 5 years behind.
You say that, Jeff, but you and I know, and Val, to some extent, too, that there are a large number of companies out there that haven't even really gotten to a point where they feel comfortable with cloud, either for a policy perspective or a culture perspective or a usability perspective. So, I mean, we've been in cloud for a long time. Collectively, it seems like we're behind, but then you look at some of the users of this stuff and you realize that like they're really behind.
They're behind, but that's a dangerous spot because their competition is on the cloud, and they're building products, they're building features, they have a CI/CD process, they are going to have things out, in a rapid sequence. When the other company, you're not using cloud. And again, we talk about cloud, and cloud's not a place, right? Cloud's the model. It's like you need that so that you can have that agility, so you can innovate on top of it. Buzzword insert all the buzzwords here.
So hashtag innovate, hashtag DevOps.
Yes. So I think the no vendor lock-in is kind of crap. Like you look at mainframes. I mean, mainframes, one of the best places to run Windows and Linux, and it just works, right? I mean, we're all trying to get back to the mainframe days, but in a cheaper fashion. I think there's something to be said about having one throat to choke and not having 20 vendors pointing at each other, 20 different teams pointing at each other, 100 different people. Like if you're a CIO or a CTO and you have these responsibilities, you really got to be looking at what is easy, what is simple. Because the other thing I talked to about with our prospects and customers is today is the least complex day we will ever have in technology. Like today's it. Like tomorrow, more complex. The next day, more complex. And if there are people that think like, well, cloud is kind of taking away some of my responsibilities, it's making things easier. It's not. it's changing the model. Like it is becoming more complex. Like when you dig in deep, there are more things to think about. There are more considerations. There are new ways to do things and new things that are coming out. So we really got to challenge ourselves to start learning it. Be open-minded. Start looking at these technologies not as a replacement to our skills, but as to really need our skills even more. But it needs our skills in a different way. Like we've got to adapt.
Yeah. Hey, so you talked about a couple of things that, could have been different, such as, OpenStack could have focused more on the core. Maybe we could have talked less about the vendor lock-in stuff. I mean, what are some other things like we could have done better as a community with OpenStack, not, or just the community in general, that to make things better and maybe be more ahead today than where OpenStack is today?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a great question because you've gobbled up all the innovative companies.
Another way. Does open source work? Do you fundamentally believe that open source is sustainable?
No, I don't. I personally, and I'll get a lot of crap for this, I don't believe open source is a good business model at all. I would not invest my money in an open source business model company. Like I
Red Hat or like.
Well, again, Red Hat's the only one.
Yeah.
Like name another. There is Red Hat, and that is it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue MySQL, but that's Oracle, and so it is Red Hat, and that model has become very, very popular. Now, I do support open source, and I do support proprietary technologies that open source their core technologies. Like let it be out there, let people use it. It should be easily consumable, and you should be able to look at the code. But then the stuff that is production ready and the secret sauce behind the business and the thing that keeps the business running. Because again, us IT folks, we don't want to pay our vendors, right? We don't I'm not paying you for that. I could write that, I could do that. But you want your vendors to be in business so that they can support you. Like it's an ecosystem. You make money, and part of that is spending money on other people, and those people help you make more money.
But is the model changing away from that and more towards a looking at a customer, not as someone who buys from me multiple millions of dollars worth of stuff every few years, but rather, a company that provides me with a service that I pay for over the course of that product or service's lifetime? Like the subscription model, moving to the subscription model. Like I'm starting to look at my bills, and what was it the other day? I was trying to buy something. Oh no, my sister posted, my twin was like, "Hey, does anyone have an Adobe CS6 disc?" And I was like, dude, that ish is in the cloud now. And she was like, what? I'm like, I don't think you can run that anymore. And she's like, well, yeah, I can, because I'm still running OS Sierra. And I was like, wait, what? What? And I thought about that, and I was like, yeah, that was pretty genius on Adobe's part to go to a subscription model. And I've used it, and I think it's great. And they've got a lot of backlash, but people don't blink an eye. And I'm looking at my credit card statements, and there's like stuff that my kid is subscribed to on my iPad, which is now password protected, and he's completely locked out. I have to change my password every 6 days or whatever. But I was starting to think about like all these things, and so I looked at my credit card, and I could not believe how many like recurring monthly fees I have. And some of them are small, like for Google storage, I pay like $2.11 or whatever to back up all my photos. Like that's not a lot of money. And I'm happy to pay it, knowing that there's peace of mind in the cloud. But like the days of me going and like buying a CD and paying like, $100 or $200 for a piece of software, even studio software for the music industry, like people are just starting to look at buying a subscription and expecting that the software gets better and better over time.
Yeah. And this is subscription model, excuse me, it's brilliant. It's easier to consume, but it is more expensive.
It is,
It is more expensive, but it also expensive for who? Because the argument, and I've talked to a few companies about this. The argument is if you sell software or you sell service, and you can make that easily orderable, then you don't have the overhead of paying for salespeople or all these other things. If you can go online and click and order something, like Walmart has got to keep all the lights on. They've got, big buildings and property taxes and all this other stuff. Like, no wonder they're pushing their online business,
We're taking the risk out of it. I mean, and that's a good point to go back to OpenStack. I mean, it is very complex. It is a risk to take on. You need really skilled people to build it and to operate it. And it's harder to operate than it is to build. There is a great product from Cisco that lets you dip your toes into it at a monthly rate. Like, you don't have to risk buying a couple $1 million worth of racks, a couple racks, or paying the upfront license fees from other competition, because OpenStack is not free. I'll tell you that OpenStack is not free, and you can dip your toes in and start and giving the developers what they want, which is the developers do want that kind of infrastructure as code. They want the API access, and you definitely have stuff laying around. Like, this is not a hard, difficult task, and it's the best way. Like, you didn't race the Tour de France with Greg LeMond when you were 5, learning to ride a bike, right? I mean, you had training wheels. Like, that's what we need. We have to have that, and then learn what you like, learn what you don't like, and run the trunk in your labs and get to know it and do that and see how you like it and see what the differences are. But in production, you do need that. You want that single throat to choke, and you want to make your customers happy, which the customers are your consumers of the cloud.
Are you talking about Cisco MetaCloud, just for clarification's sake and for transcript purposes?
Yeah, for transcript. Oh, yes. Was that a commercial? Yeah. So,
hey, Jeff, I got a question, Jeff. So going forward, I mean, what's the future of OpenStack? I mean, how does everybody's talking about Kubernetes now? Does that displace it? I mean, what's the what do you think happens going forward?
Well, the thing that no one saw was the container movement that came out of nowhere, right? And became so popular. And again, because it just, what you run your laptop.
Wait. Time out. Popular to who? Because
developers.
Right. Popular for developers.
But it's popular for operations folks too.
Of smaller, medium-sized companies, or for larger companies that either build a software product or are doing containerized networking or something like that. But like, are we seeing like massive container use in the enterprise space?
Yes.
You are.
Yes. But okay, with asterisks, they're not in production. Like, everyone is using containers. Everyone's using them. They're in development. They are in labs. They are in like kind of staging stuff. The production. Are you
finding them in individual BUs or in like IT umbrella, centralized IT?
Definitely both. And then even on the kind of rogue business units that are using AWS. I mean, they're using containers there too. But the stuff we're seeing in production is small. I mean, small for us. Like, and some of the folks that we see speak, and I always like drilling down into folks and their production side, because like they'll speak at a Kubernetes conference and about what they're doing, and it sounds great, and and they're a big company, right? And then when you get down into the weeds, they're like, well, this is a 20 server project.
That's test.
that's we're
even though they're like a large financial bank that is being touted using it.
They're doing something.
You know what Tim Crawford said on a recent podcast? He's like, look, number one, stop targeting the CIO, and number two, let's just give people a minute. Let's give people a minute to get comfortable with these technologies before we're blazing off to the next thing, because people are falling behind. Do you agree with that?
It goes back to my statement of today is the least complex day we'll ever have, right? Like, it's not going to slow down.
Right.
It's going to change. There could be a new whatever type of virtualization. Maybe there's app virtualization that kind of hits us out of nowhere, that you don't like. It's just putting an IP stack onto whatever app you have, right? Like, we don't know what's going to come out of left field and disrupt the container space.
Or right now, like what political things early. Exist, right? Like net neutrality. That's going to be a big deal, That's going to fundamentally change the way people think about service providers, right? It could potentially.
Sure.
are we going to see an emergence of, a different type of service grid that's kind of not similar to anything we have today?
Yep. But you know what the nice thing is though? What I like about regulations and different laws and anything that suppresses what you can do fuels a crazy amount of innovation. People will figure out ways around this, and people will they do more, right?
Loopholes.
Absolutely,
you
yeah.
put more guardrails, and then you find these crazy things like companies are going to pop up that do really cool things and blow it away. So it's almost like you almost want less regulation and keep things the norm. And that would be simple.
Look, I think what you say is a huge reason why AWS has been successful. They said, here's what we offer and this is what we offer. And people are like, oh, what about this? What about that? And engineers found ways to engineer around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in turn, AWS said, well, who are all those people being really successful and what kind of business are they in? Oh, we should build that feature set. We should do that and offer it. Like their customer base is the best beta ground they have.
Sure. Yeah, they know who's using what for sure.
So what happens going forward with Kubernetes? I mean, does it take over and people no longer go to OpenStack conferences and just go to KubeCon and stuff like that? Or I don't know, DockerCon was it last week? And
yeah, in Austin. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it definitely Kubernetes feels like early OpenStack. It's got the momentum. It's what's interesting too. It's smaller startups that the ecosystem is not really made up of the giants, and they're not trying to go in and get control. I think they're still licking their wounds from OpenStack, so they're not.
But
is that all in?
Is that a nature of where Kubernetes came out of?
Well, Kubernetes was built to fuel GCP consumption.
Yeah,
right.
Which
no doubt about that. Yeah, no doubt about that.
People looked at it as, that's Google's thing. We're not going to use Google's thing because we compete with Google.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it almost doesn't matter because again, it's the momentum's there. It's what the developers are using. I mean, it's like OpenStack was trying to service the developers without including them, and Kubernetes is all about the developer. It's all about giving the developer access to their pod and having that control. So
what is the balance that a company has to take to balance security and policy and all of these, enterprise things that all large companies have to deal with to most likely reduce their risk with speed and agility and a developer's desire to go fast? Like, what's that balance? And is it something that can be solved by technology? Because we asked every single guest on the podcast, what do you have to do to be successful at cloud? Is it more of a culture thing that you have to embrace, or is it a technology thing? And they all said, oh, by far it's the cultural thing. Like, it makes me wonder, are we going to see a sort of all of the open source projects kind of come back together, and there's just going to be like, an open source thing and then all these other things? Like, I don't know. I think open source is a great model. I think it gives people capabilities that they may have not had otherwise. I think having open APIs at the very least, like if you're not going to integrate with other things, then I think you're dead in the water. But what are companies going to have to do to be able to, follow all of the sort of policy and security requirements that they have, but also, have this super agile fast cloud thing? Or are those things always going to be odds?
No, I think it goes back to the vendor lock-in. I think there's going to be a change. I think all of these startup companies have come about because the big players were slow. Cisco was slow, Dell, HP. I mean, all of the giants, IBM, were not filling these gaps. They were not moving fast enough. But you know what? They've caught up. Cisco's caught up. I mean, the giants have taken a long time. They've taken 8 years and they've caught up. Like, I think there was a jump into OpenStack because everyone missed the virtualization wave. They thought that was it, but really containers is the next version of virtualization, right? I mean, it's operating system level. Like, I think there's going to be a swing back to going all in. Like, okay, like Cisco has a lot of offerings around this. Like we we're going to make business decisions out of this. Like we want to go with this route. There's going to be more of a platform play. Like they're going to say, okay, I'm going to go with all in on Cisco. I'm going to go all in on HP. Hopefully it's all in on Cisco, right? But I think it's going to be more about vendor management. Because again, you go to AWS, the customers that we work with and build apps for that are on AWS, I mean, it's soup to nuts. When they're all AWS, it's one bill for support, for everything, for consumption, all of that. It's a complex bill to read, but it's one bill. So I think we're going to get vendor fatigue. I think we're going to have that billing fatigue. I think it's going to swing back to more, we've swung pretty far out onto the open source piece, and I think it's going to come back into some in proprietary in a way. And there are even new startups coming out that are saying, no, we're proprietary software.
And you think this is where Kubernetes has a play, or is it, or not?
Oh, well, Kubernetes has a real shot because, again, they're being prescribed about the way and how it works and how to implement it. It's not trying to be as inclusive. It's got Google engineers behind it, like pretty hard, developing against it. And you've got a lot of smart, some of the best and brightest people. Again, same with OpenStack, but I know a lot of OpenStack folks that have moved over to developing against Kubernetes. So, and it's moving really fast. It's moving really fast. You've got so much integration now between, with Red Hat and with CoreOS, and there's a lot of people doing it. We've got a customer, Packet.net. They've got some great stuff around that. So it definitely is the future as of right now. It's where people want to be and where they're going. But again, I ran into a good buddy at Half Price Whiskey Night at one of my favorite bars.
Of course you
did. The only thing that's not half off is the Pappy Van Winkle. But everything's half off. And so I ran into a buddy, and it was a really good conversation because he's like, look, I've been just kind of dabbling with containers, and what do I do? And he's a developer, but he's got his whole org about, he's got full control of what he does. He can do whatever he wants. He can go all public, but he wants to be private because they've got to be in region at a bunch of places, which Amazon can't do. And he's like, well, what do I do? And it's a really interesting question because most prospects and customers don't actually ask me what I would do. They are telling me what they're going to do and want kind of a yes or no kind of thing. But it was a really strange question. I was like, what would you do? And I'm like, well, that's really tough because it's, yes, containers are it, but it's still early. It's still early from you're putting your business on this. Like, yes, get it in the labs, get your developers working on it, like get the CI/CD process going around containers. But it was kind of funny. I talked to him about, again, you want something solid, infrastructure as code, and you guys definitely came up like as an option for that. So I was like, look, do you want to be in operations? Do you want to get calls? You want to be in operations? That's where you'd want Cisco managing your OpenStack, right? You want
unless you're an operations person and don't want to lose your job.
But again, there's more complexities on top of OpenStack.
Exactly. You still need an administrator. You still need,
it just shifts a little bit. It's just moving
someone
over.
To coordinate.
Yeah, it's not getting rid of. And again, I don't. When I talk to CIOs or any leadership, and they're saying, well, we're going to do this because it's going to, I'd like to reduce headcount, and it's like, no, no, like you're thinking about this completely wrong. Like like right now, it's about you're trying to out innovate your competition. And a reduction in staff and a reduction in how you're moving faster. So you think you want to spend less and have less talent, and you're going to move faster. Where do we do that? In what area of life do we do that?
Well, they probably just think that we'll cut some ops folks because someone else will do that, and we'll just hire more unicorn developers.
Yeah. Okay.
I hear that.
Yeah, well, and absolutely, if you can get them out of their $500,000 package at Google, like you can have them.
Good luck with that essay. So let's go to the container space real quick because you've been. Are you doing the container podcast?
I'm launching it.
You're launching it.
It's
Okay.
coming out the 15th. Yeah.
The 15th of
May.
May. Awesome.
Oh, very cool.
So you've been following containers for quite some time. Who's winning in the container space?
We're doing a lot of stuff with Rancher and Joyent.
Mm.
Do you think that's by virtue of your customer base, or do you think that's by virtue of where you're located, or do you think it's just?
I think it's our customer base. Like I'll tell you who's not winning.
Who?
Docker.
Docker's not winning. Like not winning as a company or not winning as a technology.
We're not. It worries me because I'm not seeing Docker swarm as much as I should be seing it.
Yeah, compared to Rancher and some of the other ones.
Yeah, like with again against Kubernetes and everything, again, we want Docker to succeed. We need them to succeed. It's a fantastic technology. We need some more adoption around that, and I don't know what it is. I just haven't dug into it, and I'm sure the Docker folks know.
What's your personal favorite container tech?
Again, very controversial. For just strictly like all I've got is containers and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Is that Joyent? Triton from Joyent.
Right.
Which they do containers a little bit different. Like they come from the kind of Solaris background and jails and all that, and they're the most secure option at the moment. So if you're going into production, yeah, like that. But again, you could run containers on OpenStack. And you have a little more security if you're running them on VMs. I mean, I don't know. People are going to email me at the hell. They're all over the place. But yeah, so they've got a great thing, and we've had a lot of success around CoreOS and their Tectonic product, which is
really smart group of people over there. I freaking love CoreOS.
They are by far. I had a conversation with someone recently about how bad the technology industry has gotten in the last 20 years, like how much arrogance and kind of the a-holeness nature of it, and especially in Silicon Valley.
It's so funny you mentioned that because I have a woman that's going to be on the podcast soon who wrote an article about that very thing that was it was in Fortune, and I was like, I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, is this for real?
Wow.
But yeah, I agree. And I don't know what's creating that. I don't know
it's gotten really bad. And that's why I love working with CoreOS, because like Polvi and Redbeard, I mean, these guys are like, one, they will outsmart everyone combined out of the room. And they're so cool about it. They're so humble. They're so awesome.
They're so cool about the way they're outsmarting you.
Well, no, it's not about
that. They're not arrogant.
They're not
arrogant. I got it.
Yeah, it's not about that. They are. Yeah, they're just.
That's very cool.
And it says something about the culture there, and again, culture is top down. So I have a lot of respect for Alex and what he's done there and what they've built. And
I ran into Alex's old professor or leader of the Oregon State open source group. Yeah, older guy, super cool. And I was like, yeah, you're Oregon. Oh, cool. Alex Polvy's like, oh, yeah. And he's just like the nicest, like burliest, most humble guy. And I could see why a lot of people that have come out of that program in particular have risen through the ranks of tech. It's pretty fascinating. But I don't know. I definitely see, I get so mad when I see a company like, Uber that is just like, crushed it from a business point of view. But you've got a CEO who wants to, you got videos of a CEO telling off one of your drivers. Like, who does that? Like, is it the influx and the opportunity and the money and the? I think it's the opportunity that creates these sort of attitudes.
I don't know. I use Lyft.
Maybe it's because people read about Steve Jobs and they think that's the way you're supposed to act. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, it's funny about Docker. I remember DockerCon 1, Ben Golub, the CEO, standing up there. He's like, we have all this great technology. There must be some way to make money off of it. I remember that was like his whole conundrum.
Yeah.
And
no, they do.
Yeah,
it's a hard problem to figure out, but they need to do it.
Yeah.
What about platform as a service, Jeff? What do you see there?
Yeah. I mean, Pivotal is, you talk about like the PaaS stuff, or
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing more and more Pivotal.
Are you?
Yeah, which is, again, it's straight where I'm saying that it's kind of swinging back where people kind of have this fatigue around some of the stuff, and they're kind of going, well, this is not, we're compromising. This is not what we want to do necessarily, but it's a safe bet. It works. You know, and I encourage that. I mean, you know, put the new stuff in the labs, get it ready. Like you should already have this stuff near production and be playing
Always
with it
be
and know how to
learning.
operationalize it. Yes.
Yeah,
It should always
absolutely.
be there. It shouldn't be like, oh, we're you know, 4 years into the container movement and we're thinking about buying some gear to, you know, play with containers. It's no, you need to have that. You need to invest in labs. You need to have labs teams. You need to, you know, again, they're going to be solving the problems you don't know you have or will have.
I feel like in that regard, you know, the whole, you know, fail fast. Wes Josie, one of our podcast guests, said, you know, there's kind of like this divide. It's like the companies founded before 2010 and companies founded after 2010. There's kind of like this sharp line where there's like, you know, the companies before 2010 are looking at like, you know, kind of older types of infrastructure. Companies in 2010 don't have any of that old stuff, but they got all this new stuff, but now they're starting to need some of that old stuff. And so he calls that middle zone like the Goldilocks zone. And so you need kind of this healthy mix, but same thing, you got to keep it fresh and make sure that you have infrastructure that can support these newer technologies as they become introduced. And that's tough. I feel like no matter which way you go, you're going to be creating technical debt in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And again, most of this stuff runs on VMware. Like, I mean, I tell folks too, like, if you're dipping your toes in, like, you know, VIO is great. Like, start it, give access to your developers early. Like if you're not doing it now, again, you're 2 years late. Like, give them access to it. And while you're doing that, start building out your you know, bare metal OpenStack build. Like,
Sure.
it shouldn't be, you can go in multiple paths at the same time to get there faster.
Yeah, good point. And things like Kubernetes run just fine on VMware, right? I mean, you can just run it there if you want to get your feet wet.
Get your feet wet, yep. And then
run anywhere, right?
Yeah, yep.
So how do you address, you know, obviously if you got a lab, you got the technology piece, but like, how do you fix that culture piece? How do you get, you know, what do you, when you're talking to companies and they're telling you like, I want to reduce headcount. I mean, to me, that's a change management, you know, process conversation. And that to me is a little bit harder to fix.
And that's an Accenture conversation. And I think what we've seen in the past too, and maybe I talked about this earlier about, you know, building empty clouds. If the business of IT has not changed and adapted to leverage and utilize cloud will not be used. You can't just throw technology at this problem. And that's what people have been doing for the last few years. And we built, you know, clouds that I consider unsuccessful because, you know, it worked perfect, but they didn't have any business units come onto it. It was like, well, we're building it to move people over, but the people, you know, the business units are still kind of, in some cases, own a lot of the stuff. And so you need to get a sponsor in doing these projects. You need to get one and then have two backups. And then, you know, have a workload ready. All these clouds we built too is we'd always laugh because we're like, okay, tell us about your workloads. Oh, we don't know them. Well, then what are you doing? What are you doing? Know your workloads, know what's going on know these business units, what they need and timeframes and you know, put it together but you want to get it consumed. But back to the culture piece, I mean, you know, that's tough. We work a lot with Cloud TP, you know, they're good at doing that, changing the business of IT. Because again, you can't just, okay, great, you've got chargeback now on your cloud. Well, no one knows how to bill it. No one knows how to, you know, the business units don't know how to, they just don't know.
Like, and it has an API. You're like, oh, what do I do with this API?
Yeah. It's, you know, you're like, it's like going to your grandma and throwing iPhones in her face. Like, just use it, right? Like, here's an Android, here's an iPhone, here's another iPad, here's, you know, like, you're not giving her any instruction.
I know. I told my grandma she was a computer user like at work, and they had like, you know, attendance system that was built on, you know, mainframes with green screens and everything else. But I gave her an iPad because she really wanted to use the QVC app. That's what she wanted to do.
Oh,
She's like, I keep
Good.
seeing this thing on QVC and I
Yeah.
want to try it. And so she gets the iPad and I show her how to log in or whatever. She's like, okay, what do I do? And I was like, what do you think you should do? What are you trying to do? Just forget everything you know about the other computers you've used and just do what makes sense. And I realized at that moment that like what comes intuitive to a lot of people, especially people who are, I'll say 40 or under, may not be as intuitive to people who are like 45 or 50 or 55 or 60 with an increasing amount of complexity as you go up in age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also,
I'm-
as people in the cloud space that have been in it for a while, we're seeing it. You know, we're living this, and people who have not been moving in this mode, coming to it can be rather difficult and challenging.
Can you imagine coming into OpenStack right now, like as a new person into the community? It would just, to me, it might be a little bit overwhelming.
I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably find a podcast series and just start listening to it.
Nice. I see what you did there, Jeff.
Well, it looks like we'll have one to look forward to listening to on containers, so that should be pretty good. What's the URL for all that? Do you have that all set up yet?
It's containerpod.com. Oh, sorry, no, I did this wrong. Containerpod.fm.
Containerpod.fm. Cool. Yeah. And that'll start in May.
Yeah, May 15th.
May 15th.
And I'm getting the kind of starting out with like the who's who of containers.
Nice.
And then we'll start branching out and then hopefully maybe Nikki will join a few. And
great.
I always get the I think the last one I did, Nikki, I don't think you were able to make it. And it's like, where's Nikki? Everyone's always, where's Nikki?
Didn't we talk to some of the Kubernetes folks at one point? That was a really good episode.
Yeah, we did talk. Yeah. And you know what? I had some of the VIO from VMware, the OpenStack folks, some engineers in the office this week, and we're sitting down, and one of the guys is like, "Oh, by the way, you know, I'm a big fan of your podcast," and he's like, "Why did you never have VMware on there?" And I was like, honestly, like the guests that we had on the podcast, Nikki or I knew them, right? Like we knew. I was just like, look, it wasn't personal. It was just like I didn't know anyone at VMware. That's all. So it wasn't any. Yeah, sorry, VMware.
I know we've got Pivotal coming up on the show too, but if anyone has any suggestions for guests, let me know. I mean, we're trying to mix it up a bit, and it's always good to have people who have different opinions. And I can't imagine the storm that is going to come your way after some of the views that you've expressed here, but we're unfiltered, and that's okay.
Yeah, and again,
okay.
I feel bad because everyone that I've met at OpenStack Foundation, I think they're great people. I've met so many. I don't mean to be so down on that. It just I was I think
it's fair to say that the trough of disillusionment is real.
Yeah, because Randy Bias used to do those great presentations about where we were and yeah, I mean he's been right on. I mean I think he still writes on his blog, and so
I'm having him on the guest on this podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
He's at Juniper now, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of folks have moved around, but it's really fun. Are you going to be at the OpenStack Summit or Red Hat Summit?
Nope.
No.
I'm going to be at Dell EMC World speaking.
In Austin? Is that in Austin?
In Vegas.
Vegas. It's in Vegas. Good times. Well, where can we find you, Jeff?
Twitter, I'm at Jeff Dickey if you want to reach out to me. And then stay tuned to the containerpod.fm. You can find me there. Just at me on Twitter and I'll get back to you.
Yay.
Awesome.
It's been real. It's been fun. I think this is the most you've ever talked on a podcast that we've done. It is. Because normally I sit there quietly and I'm like polite and I don't get to express my feelings. Thank you. It's been like therapy. You definitely could. It's like therapy.
Yeah.
I'll send you a bill in the mail.
That would be a good another idea for you guys. Cloud therapy.
You had an awesome idea. You had an awesome idea for an app, and I want to talk to you about this app when we get off the podcast. And maybe I can have you back on the show here later this year if this app becomes a real thing, because it needs to become a real thing.
It does need to be a real thing. Yeah.
It's brilliant, but I don't want to give it away. I'll let you. I don't know. It's a good one. Anyway, well, Jeff, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Val, an honor and a pleasure as always. And I hope to see you back later on this year. And just let us know
can I say one more thing before we close?
Yes.
I mean, we have Metapod here too. We've got it all installed. So if people do want to kick the tires and get that, we onboard customers all the time. It's a great way to without having to dig up infrastructure from the IT garage.
We like working with you guys because you guys get that gear in there and you get it installed and it's fast and it's set up and it's ready to go. Makes it easy for us.
So if anyone wants to demo it, I'm just putting it out there. We've got it all. We've got sample apps and everything to kind of figure it out. Just want to throw it out there.
Your cabling jobs are envious. I'm envious of the cabling jobs that you guys do. Every time I see the little box with the flashy lights in it, I'm like, man, that's pretty.
We had a big customer call it. They call it rack porn.
Rack porn, yeah.
Oh,
don't look under my desk right now. My feet are literally tangled up in cords at the moment.
That's funny. Yeah, we used to call that cable porn because it was just nicely done. Yeah, but racks are more inclusive, so very nice.
Good times. Well, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Thank you again for joining us. This one went a little bit over, but we hope you enjoyed it. And we're heading to Red Hat Summit, then OpenStack Summit. Hope to see you guys out there. Don't forget to subscribe. Everybody say bye.
Bye. Thanks, Jeff.
Everyone. Thank you.